Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming today to another of our regional plan snapshot series. Today, we are covering climate and energy 101. So this is another two-part presentation as part of our regional snapshots. With me today are Jenny Neiman of the City of Flagstaff and Amanda Atkinson of Coconino County, both of whom bring years of expertise on this topic and will be sharing a lot of information over the next 15 minutes. Next slide. Too fast. As you may know, the regional snapshot series occurs on most Mondays. We're skipping some holidays. So for instance, next week, we're going to skip spring break, and we're actually going to have the next session on March 21st. So please check back in on our website, the flagstaff.az.gov/regional plan 2045 for the link and registration for that in the next week. As we provide with all these presentations, this is what we know right now. So it's basically a draft. Updating the regional plan is a multiple year process. And so we're sharing what we know today and hoping to hear some great exchange on what it means for the community and for our future. So next slide. As we said, this is part of a two-part series. So today we are covering climate projections, goals, and types of climate action. And then the next one, which I think is the one that's going to be on the 21st, will be vulnerabilities, equity, opportunities to strengthen communities. So with that, I will hand off the presentation to Jenny Neiman.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate it. And thanks for having us today. I am very excited to be here with Amanda, my county counterpart and partner. But my name is Jenny, and I am the Climate Program Manager in the City of Flagstaff Sustainability Office. We're going to go quickly through some background stuff. We have a limited amount of time, and so the idea is just to give a snapshot. First, I want to talk about why we're here, right? Climate change is here. The climate is changing. It has come to Coconino County. This is a graph of our average annual temperatures over the last 120 years. And what you can see here is that our average is around 52.3 degrees. And the orange bars are higher and blue bars are lower. What we're seeing year after year in the last 2 decades. Melissa, if you could just hit next slide once, it'll get us a nice circle. There we go. That the last couple decades, we're just above average every year, right? So our entire average is shifting, right? We're getting warmer in Coconino County. This information comes from the Coconino County and Flagstaff climate profile, which we put together to do Flagstaff's first climate plan. Next, Melissa. In terms of, what's going to happen in the future. So again, climate change is already here, but what's going to happen in the future? Well, we're going to see temperatures continue to increase. The orange and the red bars here are just different scenarios, but what you can see is that we predict between about a 5 to a 14 degree increase in temperatures, increase in our average temperatures in Coconino County. That's a huge range. There's a lot of impacts there, but there's a lot of different scenarios about where the world can go and what might happen. So no matter what, though, we know we're going to have really significant increases in the future. Next slide, please. In terms of precipitation, we get a lot of questions about this. Well, will we see more rain or less rain, more water? We don't really know. The climate scientists have looked like this, and all this shows is there's a lot of noise, right? There's a lot of uncertainty in precipitation. We think it might stay the same. What we do know is that there's more energy in the atmosphere. And so we're going to see bigger storms, right? We're going to see our rain come in sort of bigger events like we saw with flooding last year. We do know that we will see less snow as temperatures increase. Next slide. So in terms of what all that means, what does that mean for you, right? First, hotter temperatures, as we talked about, lower snowpack. Most of our temperature increases are going to be in lower or overnight lows increasing. So that's more, at nighttime when maybe we're getting snow, maybe the temperature's stuck right around 33 degrees and we get rain in the middle of the winter. Increased wildfire risk and less healthy forests, that comes with this general increase in aridity and more severe drought. We've seen a pretty monster drought for the last 2 decades. We anticipate that to continue. Next slide, please. And so what we do in our work, and I know in Amanda's work too, is we go from the science and what it says about the weather, right, in our forests, and how does that affect people, right? And so this is where really kind of where the rubber hits the road. How does this affect our tourism, our water use, our land use, and our health, right? We know that it affects all things. Climate change is going to affect every aspect of our lives, all aspects of our community systems. And so, tourism and economy, we probably see fewer people come up in the winter, but way more people come up in the summer, right? How does that affect our housing demand, right? How does that affect the number of folks who want to live in Flagstaff? How do, increased aridity affect our health, right? And more wildfires and unhealthier air days. There's all these really complex systems, and our job is to start thinking about how does this change sort of the environment that we live in, not just the physical environment, but our economics, as well as our health, right? And our social environment. Next slide, please. Just one last principle before I hand it over to Amanda. Not all people face the same threats. It's really critical that we understand that, right? The threats to you, to your welfare, to your family may vary based on your age, your race, your language, your health, etc. Amanda, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you now to talk about sort of how the county thinks about some of these.
Thank you, Jenny, and very excited to be here like you and talk about climate, energy, and Coconino County. And just wanted to quickly highlight, as Jenny was running through the climate projections and the impacts and the vulnerabilities, so Coconino County, as she highlighted, has a lot of similarities to Flagstaff. But I did want to quickly highlight that because Coconino County, we're the second largest county in the continental USA geographically. We have over 18,000 square miles. And because of that, we have 5 different climate zones, and many of our residents also live without grid tied utilities and infrastructure through wastewater systems and things like that a lot of cities provide. And because of that, it increases vulnerabilities and risks in Coconino County. And so as we work to with our planning and our codes and regulations and in our community, that equity piece and our process looks a little bit different in Coconino County. And so it's why it's great that we get to partner with the city of Flagstaff and other cities in Coconino County to be broad in our work. And so we're moving into some of our goals in climate and energy. And Coconino County has identified through our county comprehensive plan several goals for climate and energy work throughout the county, both in our facilities and operations, and then in support of community efforts. And some of these, so on this slide are some pictures showcasing some of the work we've done in Coconino County. The picture in the middle is about our county facilities. So we have offset 1/3 of our electricity consumption through renewable energy, something we're very proud of and excited about and working to increase. We've now transitioned towards electric fleet and have 2 Chevy Bolts that we're expanding with this coming year into more of our fleet. And so, yeah, we like the city have goals, but we don't have a climate plan yet. So that is a goal for us, is to develop a climate action and adaptation plan, as well as a broader sustainability plan for county facilities. Next slide, please. And then Ginny is now going to talk about some of the city's goals specific to climate.
Yeah, so I'm going to just really quickly, the city has had 2 climate plans so far. In each of those, we outline these 3 main areas of action: reducing our impact, that's mitigation; preparing for change, that's saying, how can we adapt and thrive in the future? And then equity, and thinking about all of our vulnerable community members. The core goal that a lot of folks know is carbon neutrality. So the city has declared to reach carbon neutrality by 2030. That's our mitigation goal. But we need to do it while also thinking about these other 2 goals of adaptation and equity. Next slide, please. I wanted to talk really quickly about where our emissions come from. So when we talk about carbon neutrality, we think about greenhouse gas emissions. And so to change things, we have to know what we're doing, right? We have to know where we are causing emissions. And so we think about 3 big categories here. It's transportation, waste, and building energy. There are a lot of numbers on the slide, but those are the 3 big categories to know. Next slide. And so when we think with the city and carbon neutrality, how do we start to reduce those emissions? How do we build a stronger community? We think in 4 general areas. Those are the 4 areas we have here. So it's our neighborhoods. That's how we get around. That's also how we relate to our neighbors. Our energy sources. So the energy that we use in homes, which Amanda is going to talk about a little bit, and other buildings. Our consumption, so what we use in our homes, what we eat, right? The materials we bring in. And then finally, our commitment, which is about actually removing carbon dioxide from the air. Next slide, please. Now, Amanda and I are going to really briefly talk about sort of the big 3 areas, and those come from those big 3 areas that we talked about before. So we think about, again, buildings, transportation, and waste. Within that, we kind of divided a little bit to think about transportation and land use. So that's things like the regional plan deals with, how we plan our community. Buildings, so how we use materials and energy in our homes and businesses, and then energy. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk really quickly about transportation. So within the city, we talk a lot about what we call the big shift. Transportation causes about 1/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions in the city of Flagstaff. This is pretty similar to communities across the country. We have built our communities to be really dependent on cars. What we know today is that 38%, so at least 1 in 3 car trips in Flagstaff are under 2.5 miles. When we look at that number, we don't think everybody needs to bike or walk or take the bus, but what we see is that a lot of folks could be doing that, right? And we know that folks who take the bus, walk and bike, that they can be saving money, that sometimes they're a lot healthier, sometimes they're happier, et cetera. And so what we like to think about is, how can we shift car trips to walking, biking, and the bus? And so how can we shift our transportation and land use systems so that we can do that? Next slide, please. So for us, when we think about transportation, and again, that's 1/3 of our emissions, we have to think about these big shifts. And so it's a really big philosophy shift. It's about, we do have traffic. We're not going to beat traffic. No city in the world has figured out how to beat traffic, right? How do we manage it? How do we give people better options, right? How do we think about our neighborhoods? How do we think about our traditional neighborhoods and how they're mixed use and they're dense and they have lots of different options for folks to live in? How do we think about that? And then how do we think about how we're planning our transportation systems, et cetera? Next slide, please. And I'm going to hand it over to Amanda to round us out.
Thanks, Jenny. And before I dive into buildings, I wanted to just quickly touch on transportation in Coconino County, because again, with the size of our region, public transportation continues to be a challenge. And so for us, as we work to meet climate goals, it is like other jurisdictions, being creative and looking for ways, if we can't walk, bike, and those opportunities is their ride shares. And so working with NAPTA and other community partners to expand on public transportation and other means of transportation besides cars or fossil fuel cars in Coconino County is a big focus as well. And then, so moving into buildings, are proud to have a county sustainable building program that serves all the cities and communities of Coconino County. So that includes the city of Flagstaff, city of Sedona, Williams, Page, and our tribal partners as well. And it was adopted in 2003 by the County Board of Supervisors. It was started as a community initiative. And so also very proud that this was something that came from our community and is still very much community driven. And so the program provides free resources to anyone and everyone who's interested in incorporating sustainable development methods, materials, and aspects into their buildings. And we also work with codes and regulations to help make sustainable development methods easier. So an example would be tiny house permitting. So very popular, growing throughout the country and globally as diverse housing needs are being addressed and met. And so Coconino County was able to develop a tiny house permitting policy and has expanded on that since. So this, again, the Sustainable Building Program is a great opportunity to implement these climate efforts and energy saving methods. And we are encouraging now a new focus with the Sustainable Building Program is a climate initiative. And so Ginny highlighted in the graph before, buildings use more than a third of our energy and produce more than a third of our greenhouse gas emissions. And so big opportunity there, but it isn't just in the operations of buildings. It isn't just in heating, cooling of air and water, but it's also in the materials that we choose. And so we, with the Sustainable Building Program in partnerships with all the cities, are helping to bring awareness that the type of insulation we choose in the house, not only does it impact the overall performance, but it also impacts the footprint of construction. And then we also highlight different incentives that are available for community residents broadly. And so that includes the city of Flagstaff's incentives to state and federal. And we are currently looking to develop incentives through Coconino County. But because we're not a charter like other cities, it does make things a little bit more challenging for us. And I quickly highlighted in an earlier slide that the county has done a lot of work in reducing our energy consumption and our greenhouse gas emissions. And I know the city has as well. And all of us are building upon this and working towards electrifying as much as possible in our facilities, as well as encouraging community members to electrify as much as possible as well. And again, in Coconino County, it becomes an exciting, I would say, opportunity and challenge of how do we electrify when not everybody even has equity to electric resources. Next slide. So then that brings us to the next part of it, energy. Where does our energy come from? Much of our energy in Coconino County and City of Flagstaff is currently met by non-renewable clean energy sources. APS is our major utility provider. They're working towards more clean renewable energy sources and working with a corporate commission with that. I mentioned earlier, much of Coconino County is off-grid, but in relation to the regional area plan, those areas are grid-tied and have a great opportunity to electrify. And as Coconino County works on our area plans, regional or the each area of Coconino County, we're so large, has a specific plan. So the communities of Mountain Air, Kachina Village have their own plan. Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood have their own plan. But we carry the goals of the climate and energy into those area plans. And so as community members develop specific plans for their area, they look at opportunities to increase the electrification of their area. Belmont is a great example. They have a big transmission line that goes through it, so they're encouraging solar ready, net zero ready development in that area. And so being very, as Jenny highlighted, equitable and broad in our work. And then building on our community needs as we're addressing development that comes in. So in Coconino County, again, with our large land size and beautiful natural resources, we are a hot area for energy development, including wind, solar, and potentially biomass. And because of the interest of developers coming into Coconino County, in creating these types of developments, county leadership and the Board of Supervisors was very supportive of the county developing a utility scale renewable energy ordinance that provides guidance and policy for large scale wind and solar and biomass utility development in Coconino County. And this plan helps all of us meet our goals because it one ties in a natural resource protection in this plan. It ties in our water, critical water needs in terms of we might not have a renewable energy that's going to use a lot of water. So being very specific to what our needs are. And so with that, I'll go into the next slide. And I did want to highlight actually with the renewable energy ordinance that it is still in the comment area and our comment time frame, and it is going to our County Planning and Zoning Commission on March 30th for review and potential adoption, I believe. And we wanted to end today's presentation about some things that we could be more curious about as a community and as planners and folks working to support climate efforts and energy development in our region. So how does Flagstaff want to manage increased visitation and climate mitigation? And I would even grow that. How does Coconino County want to manage increased visitation, right? We have over 6 million tourists who come through Coconino County. How do we handle that? And in the city, how can we prepare for future changes in our housing systems due to climate change? So as we're moving to electrification, do we have backup systems in case the grid goes down? How can we prepare for future changes in our food systems due to climate change? How can our buildings better prepare us for the future? Smart homes, well insulated. How should our land uses change to both mitigate and adapt to the climate crisis? So these are all things that we thought would be great talking points and things for us to be curious about. With that, I'd like to open it up to Sarah, Jenny, everyone, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amanda and Jenny. We appreciate both of your expertise in this area. So now is the time for question and answer. And so I don't see any hands up yet or questions in the chat. So if you would like to ask a question, you can either use the reactions emoji at the bottom of your screen and raise your hand like Nat just did, or you can type a question in the chat. So Nat, do you want to go ahead with your question?
I have a lot, but I'll only start with one and then be quiet for a while. With a background in physics, data is so important, and I'd like some of the data you have shown. The accuracy of that data is just as important as the data. I mean, bad data sends you in the wrong direction. So I just want to emphasize to really get down and really ask where this data came from, how good is it, how important, I mean, how applicable is it to us as opposed to Phoenix or somewhere else. And that has to do with housing and everything. These are all things I'm sure you're talking about. I just wanted to emphasize that data is pretty important. Then and then I'll just add one comment after that and be quiet. And I have some more, but you talk about less healthy forest. I think it might be worth in planning ahead to talk about our changing forest. Okay, that's a different thing. A less healthy forest means, oh, what are we going to do? How are we going to stop this? What are we going to do? And a changing forest is more looking ahead. Okay, ponderosas may disappear for a portion of this and something else may come in. So I think that's important planning. So I'll stop for now.
I'd just like to say thank you, Nat, so much for that. You are right? It is less healthy forest, but you're right. It's a changing forest overall, right? And as we go and as our landscape shifts, I did want to say I put a link in the chat for the Coconino County and Flagstaff climate profile. This was actually compiled by the University of Arizona Klimas Center, which is a NOAA-funded site, and they compiled it just for us when we made the climate plan. So yes, absolutely, to good data. Most of that and what we saw was weather station data, right? And then projections. So thank you so much. And that link is in the chat. I would love it if you want to take a look and let me know what you think.
Go ahead with your question.
Am I up next?
You are.
Okay. Thank you. Like Nat, I could talk all day. But here's a couple of quick things. Electricity. If we agree that we're going to go to electricity, we've got a lot of work to do. One thing is heat pumps. Heat pumps seem to be something, we seem to have a cultural challenge with heat pumps. My construction magazines that I read tell me that all over New England, in Europe, heat pumps are pretty much the norm now. Vermont, is full of heat pumps. And in Flagstaff, it's hard to find somebody to put a heat pump in. So we've got a cultural issue. And when you put in a gas appliance, you're putting in something for 15 years at least, I'm 15 to 30. We don't want to put in gas appliances. We want to go with heat pumps. So I think we all know that. So we're going to need a very strong program. And I think it starts with a combination of city, but also contractors. You got to actually find somebody to put them in. And as far as I can tell right now, that's hard to do. I was really happy to see there's a heat pump symposium on the 31st put up by the city sustainability program, which I would definitely be there for. But New York City's gone to no gas. They're not much warmer than we are. We've got heat pumps that'll put out heat down to 10 below zero. So that ought to be a real push. So I'll do one more and then I'll let Nat go for another one of his. We should be thinking about electric vehicles. And I brought this up in the transportation plan. I don't think there's too much question now that that's where we're going. If the Ford F-150 and the Chevy Silverado and a million little cars are all going electric, and gas is going to go through the roof. And so that changes how we look somewhat at transportation. And it takes some thought to see how that changes. It's awkward to have a total, traffic jam around town, which I went through yesterday, and more cars are coming, but they will be a lot less energy used by those cars. And so how does that change some of our transportation goals? How much do we want to put, for instance, into buses if it doesn't make much difference energy-wise as transportation increases, if we're going all electric over the next 10 years or so? So that's 2 points, and I got a couple more, but Nat, take a shot.
I think we should let Jenny respond to a few of those because she's got things.
I'm excited.
I already know some of what she might want to add here. So
I thank you, Sat. These are really great questions. Thank you, first of all, for talking about heat pumps. You are right. Heat pumps are the answer, right? But there's a lot of old information out there about if they work at cold climates or not. And
Right.
Amanda, I know, has much greater expertise than I do on this. But what I can talk about is we do have a heat pump workshop on March 31st. And this is really for residents. And so if you are online, you can find it on our Flagstaff Sustainability Program Facebook page. We are hosting that in conjunction with the county. And I also put the link in the chat. After that, we're going to be doing a training for contractors, right? Because we know, right? We know that contractors today are talking people out of heat pumps, right? We also know that today it's actually cheaper to install a heat pump and your overall lifetime costs, right, are actually cheaper than it would be to put in natural gas infrastructure in a new home. So it's really, really exciting there. We also have built a home electrification sort of website because, again, we know we have a big shift in this. So I just put that into the chat as well, because we're trying to help residents know when they make these really big decisions, right? We shouldn't be installing natural gas in new homes. It's a fossil fuel. It's not healthy. And again, it can be a lot cheaper, right, for folks who just install a heat pump from the beginning. On transportation, really, really great question. So what the science tells us is that we will not get to our greenhouse gas emission goals in the transportation world with electric vehicles alone. A lot of folks just say EVs won't save us, right? What we know is we need fewer cars. We need to be taking fewer trips. We need to be taking shorter trips. In general, our land use systems do not work. They do not work well for the climate and the environment. And that is regardless of what vehicle you are driving. So whether it's an electric vehicle or it is a internal combustion engine. There's a lot of reasons for that. One is, again, we need to reduce energy demand totally, right? So we're going to have a lot more electricity demand from our homes, right? As we go to heat pumps, et cetera. We're also going to have more from our cars. We just need to be driving less, right? We also have to think about the creation of the cars, as well as creation of our energy, right? The creation of a car is a huge portion of our transportation emissions, right? And all of that, as well as when we build our community for cars, it just leads to more driving and a whole lot of bad impacts again. So that's all I'll say about that. But Amanda, I didn't know if you wanted to get into any of that, maybe particularly heat pumps, since you know a lot more about that than I do.
I'd add to that, Jenny, that not only is the car a big carbon emission, but if we did nothing to try and manage traffic, as opposed to just building as many roads as we have cars, just the cost of building the road and maintaining the road surface has a carbon emission, because a lot of what goes into our asphalt is fossil fuel products. And so if we really do decline our fossil fuel use, we may have to be looking at alternative products for street construction as well, which is a huge challenge in Flagstaff, because we have the most freeze-thaw cycles in the continental United States. So we crack our concrete and our asphalt much faster than other places. A lot of universities want to come test their products and materials in Flagstaff for that reason, because it is such a good proving ground. They get more cycles that break up the materials here than they do in other places. And that may be something we see more of or less of. That's another climate impact. Is our street materials going to hold up better or worse in a future climate? And what's that going to cost the city? And what does that mean in terms of emissions?
All great points. And really, from a county perspective, or to add on with the heat pumps, is right on target, and you too, Jenny. It's an education process, and it's new technologies and educating folks on new technologies in our area, but not new technologies to the building community. And side knows as well, some of the best ways to encourage others is to show models of success. So yeah, really excited to partner with the city on these workshops, which is going to be great in getting education out to the residents and then to the contractors. And then the other piece of it that we've talked about is then a model, showing model homes. And so every year we put on a sustainable building tour as part of the Flagstaff Festival of Science. And this year we will be highlighting heat pumps with this year's tour. And then I will also probably be doing little videos and, lots of great opportunities for people to see how does it work in a home? What are the lessons learned? And by helping to clarify misconceptions and dispel myths and uncertainties, we can move forward. So it's like the low flow toilets of the 90s, right? They didn't work as great. But most people now, and it's in code, have low flow toilets of 1.28 or less. And now we're to the stealth toilets of a 0.8 or less. And so I'm hopeful with education and resources, and then showcasing models that will be able to be successful in the phase 2 heat pumps. And then with transportation, electrification of cars. It will be a huge need for Coconino County because we don't have necessarily the biking and walking capabilities. With that said, though, it's also another challenge. As I pointed out earlier, we have limited infrastructure. So we're finding that there's communities that don't have the, it's called 3-phase power lines or transmission lines that is needed for putting in even charging stations, right? So it's going to be diverse. And in my years of experience and working in sustainability and community planning, diversity is key. It's not a one size fits all, and we're not going to have a solution that's going to fit every member of our community. And so having as many tools and resources as possible is important. And then I did want to highlight on land use, because that came up with SOT too, and that our forests are changing, and how do we adapt to it, but how do we also preserve and conserve, and because our forest soils are some of the best ways that we can mitigate climate change and sequester carbon. And so we have a great opportunity in Coconino County and city of Flagstaff and our other cities to be a model and to be a leader in protecting our soils and our forests and adapting to the changes.